I'm about to share insights that will challenge conventional thinking about winning in today's world. And I want you to approach this with an open but critical mind. You know why some genuinely good people struggle to achieve their goals? Why honest individuals sometimes find themselves outmaneuvered? Why generous people occasionally feel taken advantage of? It's not always circumstances. It's not always coincidence. Sometimes it's because they haven't learned to balance their values with strategic intelligence. There's a complex social dynamic happening all around you every single day. And while many focus solely on idealistic approaches, others have learned to combine those values with practical wisdom, the kind that's rarely discussed openly in everyday conversation. What I'm about to explore has been understood by philosophers and leaders for 500 years. It's the wisdom that separates those who achieve their goals from those who settle for less. But here's the thing. Once you understand this perspective, it expands your awareness. Once you see how human psychology really works, you'll notice patterns everywhere. You'll understand the deeper dynamics behind every interaction, every relationship, every success story. So if you prefer simple approaches to complex human situations, this exploration might challenge you, because what comes next examines the nuanced areas that most people never consider. But if you're curious about the psychology of influence and communication, if you want to understand why pure idealism sometimes leads to frustration, if you're ready to explore a more sophisticated approach to achieving your goals, then drop this affirmation in the comments. I seek wisdom, because wisdom, not manipulation, but genuine understanding of human psychology, is about to change how you navigate the world. And it's going to make you far more effective at achieving your legitimate goals while maintaining your integrity. Number 1, the limitation of rigid thinking. Let me ask you something that might be thought-provoking. When was the last time pure idealism without practical strategy actually helped you create meaningful change? Not what made you feel good about yourself, not what other people praised you for. I'm talking about tangible outcomes, real progress, real ability to create positive impact in your situation. If you're struggling to remember, there's a reason for that. And it's not because being good is wrong. It's because being good without being strategic often leads to limited effectiveness. Here's what many well-meaning people never realize. The frameworks you live by often assume everyone else is operating with the same level of awareness and intention, but that's not always how human interactions work. Think about this for a second. Every authority figure in your life, parents, teachers, leaders, mentors, they all taught you similar values. Be honest, be fair, wait your turn. Good things come to those who wait. But observe their actions carefully. When their own important goals are at stake, do they always stick to simple approaches? Or do they combine their values with sophisticated thinking about timing, psychology, and human nature? Here's an important insight. Many people teach idealistic standards while practicing more nuanced approaches themselves. They're not necessarily being inconsistent. They've simply learned that the real world requires both moral compass and strategic intelligence. The challenge is this: pure idealism without practical wisdom often leads to limited impact. You become predictable, and others who understand human psychology better may take advantage of your consistency. While you're focused solely on following rules, others combine principles with effectiveness. While you're concerned only about immediate fairness, they balance ethical behavior with results that actually create lasting positive change. Here's the key insight. Those moral principles you follow are valuable, but when applied without strategic thinking, they often don't achieve their intended purpose. You want evidence? Look at anyone who creates meaningful change in the world. Did they get there by being purely idealistic, without any strategic thinking? By never considering timing, psychology, or human nature? Of course not. They got there by being wise enough to know when pure idealism serves their mission and when it needs to be balanced with practical intelligence. Machiavelli once observed, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." This doesn't mean being dishonest or breaking promises casually. It means understanding that rigid adherence to any single approach, even a well-intentioned one, without considering context and consequences, can sometimes create unintended negative outcomes. The most effective people understand something many don't. Circumstances change. What worked yesterday in one situation might not work tomorrow in another. Inflexible thinking, whether overly idealistic or cynical, leads to inflexible results. You were taught that questioning conventional approaches makes you problematic. That thinking strategically makes you selfish. That considering psychology and timing makes you manipulative. But the people who achieve meaningful change in the world, they understand that true effectiveness requires both good intentions and the intelligence to make those intentions work in real-world situations. You know what the most challenging part is? Many people are conditioned to believe that questioning these approaches makes them less ethical, that thinking strategically about human interactions makes them selfish, that protecting their legitimate interests while helping others makes them problematic. But the people who create real positive change, they don't limit themselves with such binary thinking when their important missions are at stake. Don't be someone who follows rigid approaches that often prevent you from achieving your legitimate goals, while others develop intelligent methods for creating positive change. The world has always required both good intentions and practical wisdom. The only question is, are you ready to develop both? Drop this affirmation in the comments. I choose wisdom. Number 2. The psychology of social expectations. Here's something that might challenge your assumptions about social dynamics. The people who achieve the most meaningful results often understand psychology and influence better than those who focus solely on being consistently accommodating. Some people benefit when you're predictably accommodating while they combine kindness with strategic thinking. They appreciate when you're automatically forgiving while they practice selective forgiveness based on whether it creates positive outcomes. They prefer when you're consistently passive while they balance cooperation with assertiveness when necessary. Why? Because predictable responses can sometimes be taken advantage of in negotiations, relationships, and competitions. Think about these common pieces of advice that sound noble but often lead to limited results. Always avoid any conflict. Translation: avoid necessary difficult conversations that could solve problems and improve relationships. Never consider your own interests. Translation: let others prioritize their needs while you consistently neglect yours, creating resentment and imbalance. Forgive everything immediately. Translation: give people unlimited chances to repeat problematic behaviors without addressing underlying issues. Always be accommodating. Translation: let people cross your boundaries repeatedly without having honest conversations about mutual respect. These aren't always wise approaches. They're often mindsets that benefit people who want you to remain predictable and non-challenging while they pursue their goals more intelligently. Let me paint you a picture that happens regularly. Someone consistently interrupts you in meetings. What does conventional thinking tell you to do? Stay quiet. Don't cause tension. Be polite. So you do. You remain silent while they dominate conversations that should include your input. And everyone thinks you're such a considerate person for not creating conflict. But what really happened? Your valuable contributions were silenced, and social conditioning convinced you this was appropriate. This pattern repeats in various forms. Someone takes credit for your ideas. You tell yourself, collaboration matters most. Someone consistently arrives late to commitments with you. You tell yourself, patience is a virtue. Someone repeatedly asks for favors without reciprocating. You tell yourself, giving is its own reward. Every single time you convince yourself you're being good. But really, you're training people that your time, ideas, and energy have no boundaries. Machiavelli once said, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions." The deception is this. Some people convinced you that standing up for yourself appropriately is wrong, that expecting reciprocity is demanding, that protecting your legitimate interests while helping others is selfish. Meanwhile, observe how these same people act when something they value is threatened. Watch how they balance their principles with strategic responses when their own important goals are involved. Your parents told you to share everything, but did they share their resources indiscriminately? Your teachers told you to be honest, but did they always share complete information about how success really works? Your leaders preached humility, but do they consistently practice it in competitive situations? Often the answer reveals a pattern, different standards for different situations, depending on what serves their larger purposes. They taught you social expectations partly to create predictable, manageable interactions, while they reserved the right to be more sophisticated when their own important objectives were involved. Your consistent accommodation became their opportunity. Your automatic forgiveness became their permission to repeat behaviors. Your patience became their unlimited time to prioritize other things. Here's the part that should concern you. This isn't always accidental. Sometimes this is systematic. Sometimes this is intentional. Some systems benefit from populations of people who won't challenge ineffective approaches, won't demand better treatment, won't question arrangements that serve some people better than others. And you? You may have been the perfect participant, the perfect example of someone who actually follows social expectations that others treat more flexibly. But awareness creates options, and when people become aware, they learn that the world operates by more complex principles than simple social expectations suggest. The question is, how long will you operate with incomplete information about how human psychology actually works? Drop this affirmation in the comments. I see clearly. Number 3, the psychology of presentation. Now I'm going to show you something that will completely change how you see successful people in any field. They understand something crucial about human psychology. People respond to presentation as much as substance. You think that effective leader got results by being exactly the same in every situation? You think that respected figure never had to adapt their communication style based on their audience? You think success comes from having only one way of interacting with people? Think again. The most effective people aren't rigidly consistent in their presentation. They're something far more sophisticated. They're intelligent communicators who understand that different situations require different approaches. This is the insight that separates highly effective people from everyone else. Effective people know that communication is contextual. Less effective people think communication should be identical regardless of circumstances. What they figured out that many haven't. Influence doesn't depend on your intentions alone. Influence depends on your ability to connect with people in ways they can understand and appreciate. Machiavelli once said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." This isn't about being inauthentic. This is about being intelligent. This is about understanding that the aspects of yourself you emphasize in one situation might not be the most effective aspects to emphasize in another situation. Let me give you examples that will make this crystal clear. You're at a family gathering where everyone's sharing personal experiences. Do you reveal your deepest struggles to appear vulnerable? Or do you share something meaningful but appropriate that builds connection while maintaining your emotional boundaries? The less strategic person overshares and may create awkwardness. The more strategic person builds genuine connection while maintaining appropriate boundaries. You're in a discussion with someone who has strong opinions about something you have expertise in. Do you overwhelm them with technical details to prove your knowledge? Or do you share insights in ways they can appreciate and apply? The less strategic person may create resistance. The more strategic person creates understanding and potentially gains a valuable connection. You discover that someone has been sharing inaccurate information about a project you're involved in. Do you correct them publicly because truth matters most? Or do you address the situation privately in a way that preserves relationships while ensuring accurate information gets communicated? The less strategic person may create unnecessary conflict. The more strategic person solves the actual problem while preserving working relationships. See the difference? It's not about deception or manipulation. It's about understanding that intelligence means adapting your communication style to create the best outcomes for everyone involved, including yourself. The people criticizing others for not being exactly the same in every situation. They may be limiting their own effectiveness. Their criticism often comes from not understanding how sophisticated communication actually works. You know what's really authentic? Being intelligent enough to communicate effectively so you can help the people you care about. Being strategic enough to build influence so you can make the positive changes you want to see. Moral consistency from a position of limited influence helps fewer people. Strategic effectiveness from a position of earned influence creates greater positive impact. The crowd may judge adaptability, but they often only see the surface. The people who matter, the ones making real decisions, building real value, creating real change, they understand sophisticated communication. And sophisticated communication is this: present the aspects of yourself that create connection and understanding. Build the reputation that opens doors for collaboration. Develop the communication skills that create opportunities to make a positive difference. This doesn't make you dishonest. This makes you effective. This doesn't make you inauthentic. This makes you complete. Master the art of contextual communication, and you master the art of creating positive outcomes in diverse situations. Drop this affirmation in the comments: I master communication. Number 4. Breaking free from limiting beliefs. Let's talk about the invisible barriers that keep many people from reaching their potential their entire lives. These aren't made of external obstacles. They're made of something far more subtle: self-imposed limitations based on misunderstood concepts about success and worthiness. This is where it gets personal. This is where you realize how deeply certain limiting beliefs can run. How many times have you wanted something that would improve your life, but stopped yourself because it felt too ambitious? How many opportunities passed you by because you worried about whether you deserved them? How many times did you apologize for taking up space, asking for what you've earned, or simply wanting to grow beyond your current situation? That's not wisdom talking. That's conditioning. The truth that many never discover is this: self-doubt is often a learned response, and it only limits you if you don't question its validity. Think about this carefully. Who benefits when you doubt your worthiness? Who gains when you feel uncertain about pursuing opportunities? Who profits when you hesitate to advocate for yourself effectively? It's rarely you. It's usually systems or people who benefit from you staying exactly where you are rather than growing into your potential. Let me address common limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs tell you that wanting growth is greedy, but why should you be satisfied with less than you're capable of achieving? Who decided that your potential should remain unrealized? Limiting beliefs tell you that prioritizing your development is selfish. But think about this logically. If you don't invest in your own growth and capability, how can you be most helpful to others? Why would it be noble to neglect developing your ability to contribute? Limiting beliefs tell you that your success somehow diminishes others. But in most situations, this is completely false. Your growth often creates opportunities for others. Your success often enables you to help more people more effectively. The people who may have unconsciously programmed you with these limitations, they often don't operate under the same restrictions themselves. While you're paralyzed by self-doubt, they're taking action and creating results. Machiavelli once said, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." You don't need permission to grow. You don't need approval to improve your life. You don't need validation to pursue your goals with determination. But here's what successful people do differently. Instead of fighting limiting beliefs, they reframe them entirely. When someone suggests you're being too ambitious, you don't defend yourself. You say, "I'm taking responsibility for developing my potential." When they call you focused on success, you don't apologize. You say, "I'm maximizing my ability to contribute." When they try to make you feel guilty for wanting growth, you don't explain yourself. You keep moving toward your objectives. Here's an exercise that can change your perspective. For the next week, every time you feel uncertain about pursuing an opportunity, ask yourself these 3 questions. First, who specifically benefits if I doubt myself in this situation? Second, is this hesitation actually protecting someone or just limiting my potential? Third, what would I do if I knew I had every right to pursue this opportunity? The answers may surprise you. In most cases, the self-doubt serves others' comfort levels more than it serves your authentic development. It's not protecting anyone, it's just keeping you smaller than necessary. The moment you understand this, everything changes. You realize that much of your self-doubt was learned, not natural. It was often installed by people who needed you to behave in ways that didn't threaten their position or worldview. You start to see that the most effective people don't spend time doubting their worthiness. They spend time developing their capabilities and creating value. They understand something you're learning. Self-doubt is optional. Limiting beliefs are optional. Results require action despite uncertainty. The people trying to make you feel guilty for pursuing growth, they may be struggling with their own limitations. The people criticizing you for wanting success, they may not understand how success actually works. Your job is not to make everyone comfortable with your development. Your job is to grow into your potential despite others' discomfort with change. Drop this affirmation in the comments: I choose growth. Number 5. The framework of strategic ethics. Here's where everything you've learned comes together into a system that actually works in complex real-world situations. Most people think ethics is binary, good or evil, right or wrong, black or white. But sophisticated people understand that ethical behavior is contextual. and they consciously choose how to apply their values based on what serves their larger purpose and creates the most positive impact. This is strategic ethics. This is how you stop being limited by oversimplified thinking and start being the architect of meaningful, positive change. Here's the framework that changes everything. You deploy kindness when it builds the relationships and trust you need to create positive impact. When being genuinely helpful creates loyalty, mutual respect, and future opportunities for collaboration, you're the most generous person in the room. You choose transparency when it serves constructive outcomes. When honesty builds credibility, demonstrates integrity, or positions everyone advantageously for better decisions, you share complete information. You show forgiveness when it demonstrates your strength and creates opportunities for people to improve. When second chances come with clear expectations and boundaries, you're appropriately forgiving. But when kindness enables harmful behavior, when complete transparency could damage people unnecessarily, when forgiveness is interpreted as permission to repeat harmful actions, you adapt, you adjust, you choose approaches that actually create positive outcomes. You make decisions that serve the greater good. Machiavelli once said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." The person lacking strategic thinking spends years being taken advantage of before they finally learn to set healthy boundaries. The strategically wise person establishes appropriate boundaries immediately and saves everyone involved from unnecessary problems. Let me show you how this works in real situations. Someone consistently requests assistance but never offers reciprocal support. The conventional response might be to keep giving because that's what good people do. The strategically ethical response is to help them understand that healthy relationships require balance by making your assistance conditional on their participation in mutual support. You have information that could benefit you significantly but might be uncomfortable for someone else to hear. The conventional response might be to agonize over what's nice. The strategically ethical response is to consider how to share important information in ways that serve everyone's long-term interests, including the other person's opportunity to address potential problems. Someone spreads inaccurate information about you that could damage your reputation unfairly. The conventional response might be to take the high road and ignore it. The strategically ethical response is to correct the record in a way that not only clears up misinformation, but demonstrates to others that accuracy and fairness matter to you. This isn't about becoming callous. This is about becoming complete. This is about developing the full range of ethical responses so you can choose the most constructive approach for each situation. Think about the people you admire most in history, the leaders who created positive change, the innovators who built value, the reformers who improved society. Did they succeed by applying simple ethical rules regardless of context? Or did they succeed by being strategically ethical, choosing their battles thoughtfully, timing their actions wisely, and using every appropriate tool available to achieve their larger mission of creating positive impact? Every person who has ever accomplished anything significant has had to make decisions that simple thinking wouldn't support. They've had to balance multiple considerations, weigh competing values, and prioritize long-term positive impact over short-term comfort. The difference is that they don't apologize for being sophisticated in their thinking. They understand that their achievements enable them to help more people, create more value, and make a bigger positive impact than they ever could from a position of moral simplicity and practical ineffectiveness. Strategic ethics doesn't mean abandoning your values. It means expanding your methods so your values can actually create positive change in complex situations. You can still be generous when generosity advances constructive outcomes. You can still be transparent when honesty serves everyone's authentic interests. You can still forgive when forgiveness creates opportunities for genuine improvement. But when those approaches don't work, when being simplistically good means being ineffective, when following basic rules means accepting poor outcomes, you have other options, better options, more effective options that still serve ethical purposes. And effectiveness isn't just about you. When you become more effective, you gain the resources and influence to help others become more effective too. When you limit yourself through oversimplified thinking, you help fewer people, including yourself. The world needs more people who can be both ethical and effective, both principled and practical, both value-driven and strategically intelligent. It needs people who understand that the highest ethical calling is building enough capability and influence to make ethical choices actually matter in the real world. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I create positive impact. Number 6. The choice before you. We've reached the moment where everything changes, where you choose between limited thinking and sophisticated understanding. The hidden cost of oversimplified approaches isn't dramatic. You don't lose everything in one catastrophic moment. You lose gradually, quietly, subtly, one missed opportunity at a time. Every time you accept what should have been questioned, you train people that your standards are flexible and your boundaries are negotiable. Every time you remain passive when you should have engaged constructively, you teach the world to make decisions without considering your input or value. Every time you choose being liked over being respected, you sacrifice your future influence for temporary social comfort. And the cost? The cost is the positive impact you could have made, the person you could have become, the contribution you could have offered if you had understood how influence and effectiveness actually work instead of how you hoped they would work. Right now, there's someone with your talents, your intelligence, your potential who is living the life you want. They have the relationships you desire, the achievements you dream about, the influence you wish you had. What's the difference between you and them? They learned what you're learning right now, but they learned it earlier. They figured out that the world doesn't reward goodness alone. It rewards effectiveness. They understood that ethical behavior is something you can express more fully once you have influence, not something that automatically gives you influence. They realized that the people teaching simplistic approaches to them weren't following those same limitations when their own important goals were involved. Machiavelli once said, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." But here's what this really means in your life. It's better to be respected for your competence than dismissed for your naivety. It's better to be taken seriously for your capability than ignored despite your good intentions. Now, I know some of you are thinking, this sounds complex, this sounds challenging, this can't be the whole picture. And you know what? That reaction proves exactly why you needed to explore this perspective. That voice in your head questioning this information, that's not necessarily your moral compass. That might be conditioning that has kept you exactly where you are while others moved ahead, using more sophisticated understanding. The people who taught you that effectiveness is somehow unethical, look at their results. Are they creating the positive impact they talk about? Are they achieving the changes they say matter to them? Are they living according to the simplified approaches they recommend to others? Often not. They taught you approaches they never planned to follow themselves when their own important objectives were involved. They gave you frameworks that limit your effectiveness, while they operated by more sophisticated principles that enabled their success. The choice in front of you right now is straightforward. You can continue following approaches that limit your impact, or you can learn principles that actually create positive change. You can keep being the person who means well but achieves less, or you can become the person who means well and achieves more. You can remain someone who has good intentions but limited influence, or you can become someone who combines good intentions with the capability to make those intentions matter. But understand this: complex human dynamics exist whether you understand them consciously or not. The only question is whether you're going to learn how influence actually works, or continue operating with incomplete information about human psychology. History doesn't remember people who were morally pure. It remembers people who were strategically effective. It doesn't celebrate those who followed every rule. It celebrates those who changed the world. And changing the world, whether your world or the bigger world, requires understanding how power actually works, not how you wish it worked. This isn't about becoming manipulative. This is about becoming complete. Someone who can be ethical when ethics create positive outcomes, and strategic when strategy serves ethical purposes. Someone who has enough influence and capability to make their ethical choices actually create meaningful positive change, instead of just making themselves feel better while accomplishing less. If this exploration has expanded your thinking about how influence and effectiveness actually work, hit that like button. Share this with someone who's been limiting their impact by using oversimplified approaches, while others create meaningful change through more sophisticated understanding. And subscribe, because this is just the beginning of exploring how human psychology actually works, instead of how we might hope it works. Most importantly, drop this final affirmation in the comments: I choose power. Because that's what you become when you stop limiting yourself with approaches that don't serve your goals and start creating your own strategic code for winning. Remember, the real world belongs to those who understand its real rules. Victory belongs to those who stop apologizing for wanting it. Power belongs to those who are intelligent enough to acquire it and wise enough to use it well. You now know what many people never explore. The question is, what are you going to do with this understanding? Welcome to sophisticated thinking about creating positive change.